We all know that the right diet is good for our bodies, but next we'll talk to someone who's convinced that the right diet is good for the planet.
This program was made possible by funding from the UCF Global Perspectives Office.
Hello and welcome to the Global Perspective Show. I'm John Bercia, Special Assistant to the President for Global Perspectives at UCF. Today we're going to talk about the environment, how to be kind to it. Our guest is actress Alicia Silverstone. She's written a book called The Kind Diet. She's interested in being nicer to the planet. Let's talk to her about it.
Hi.
Good. Welcome to our show today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about how you developed an interest in being nice to the planet.
Well, at first I didn't really understand when I was younger what, I already was very concerned about animal welfare and had slowly become interested in human welfare in terms of health and how that sort of affects everything. But when people said the environment, it seemed very abstract, and I thought, well, that's one more thing to worry about. I can't do anything about that. And I didn't really understand it, to be honest. But through my other interests of animal welfare and human welfare, I started to understand, well, hang on a second. What does the environment really mean? It means clean water, clean air, and clean food, all of which we have compromised right now, all over the world, but especially here. I mean, we're lucky enough that we have access to filters, and people have access, better versions here because we have money. But really, there's so many people who are suffering on so many levels from not clean food and unclean water and unclean air.
What is the fundamental problem then with the American diet? I hear so many specialists saying we are doing more harm to ourselves than we've ever done in history. The diet is atrocious and we need to fix it.
Well, I'm so glad you're hearing that. It's really true. We've just come up so far away from what was natural. We used to cook, and we used to use a lot of plant-based food, and animal protein, if at all, was used as a very small. It was like it's sort of like if you follow the Asian cultures, especially. There's a book called The China Study that sort of did that. Well, his study started from something else, but Dr. Colin Campbell was an incredible man. His job was to fatten animals up so that they would make more food for humans. That's what his job was. But in the process, he was a sort of a scientist, and in the process, he discovered that the actual animal protein was causing cancer. And he also went and studied all around the world and saw sort of where are the cancer rates really high and where are they basically non-existent. And in a lot of Asian cultures, you'll see that they're non-existent. They were non-existent until they took over our Western ways of eating. But what the principle of their diet was seaweeds, misos, shoyus, really good quality vegetables and rice and beans. And then there would be like a little bit of fish maybe, or a little bit of something. But it was always, in our history, the poorest people have always been the healthiest in terms of diet, because it was like the kings that got really fat and unhealthy because they had access to all this other, the meats, because they were priced appropriately. Now we've got food, the government is supporting it, and we've got food that is priced so inappropriately. I mean, the life of a creature a farmer can't even make a living, really. That's why there's all these big, huge farms. Factory farming's taken over. But anywho, people are just eating way too much processed food. They're eating way too much meat. They're eating way too much dairy and way too much sugar. And it's a shame, because food, when it's natural, is delicious. The recipes in my book are amazing, and they're delicious. And it's not like you're picking some cardboard box over this sort of. We've just gotten used to this sort of way of eating that really isn't that sophisticated at all. And when you stop eating that way and you start eating these other foods, you start to really taste differently. Your tongue will slowly go back to its natural state, and you will taste things, and you'll be like, that is amazing. I didn't realize that could be so delicious.
But then the processed foods tend to be so inexpensive, And when you try to buy the higher quality vegetable or fruit, especially if it's organic, it's going to cost more. So how does that work with people who are on tight budgets?
It's a really tricky thing, but I think growing, we've lost touch with growing our own food. I grow a lot of my own food. It's very fun. So instead of wasting all this money on your gardens and growing flowers like sweet peas, for example, or this beautiful plant that women use in their wedding bouquets, the actual flower, but there's peas that grow off of them. So you could be growing things like that are sustaining you. I mean, obviously you're going to need to get other food. You can't grow it all yourself, and depending on the weather and blah, blah, blah. But farmers markets make it really cheap. I go to the farmers market every single week. That's part of our routine. It wouldn't be a normal Sunday if we didn't go to farmers market. And you can get really good deals at the farmers market, because what you're doing also is buying what's in season. If you go to Whole Foods, which for some things to get in bulk, you do need to do that, but you don't want to be at Whole Foods. They are getting food from Florida. So like I was here one time and I remember it said a lot of things were coming from California, and I thought, I've just come from California. I don't need to eat food that's coming from California. I want to eat food that's coming from Florida. So what's growing here and what's local? And that's really exciting when you can get food that's very local, it's in season, and that way it's cheaper, it tastes better, and it's more appropriate for your body. Because if you think about it, if you're in if you're in, say, New York and it's snowing, but you're eating a bunch of pineapples that are growing nowhere near you, your body isn't really prepared to deal with that. Just like a certain tree wouldn't do well in certain circumstances, or those plants. The pineapple wouldn't grow in the snow. So it's sort of about picking things that are really local.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people talk about globalization and its benefits, one of them being that you can have food from everywhere at all times of the year, and that's supposed to be a big plus. But what you're suggesting is that there are certain foods that are suited to seasons, and when we used to eat like that, we were probably better off.
Yes.
And I know I do a lot of cooking. We seem to feel better when I'm using the whole fruits and vegetables and grains and everything.
Yes. The other thing about being cost effective for people who don't have a lot of money, it's about, one thing is reprioritizing as well. It's like, there's nothing more important than your health. There really isn't. I used to think that sounded, when I was younger, I was like, oh, shut up, I don't want to hear that, that's just ridiculous. But it's really, really true, because if you want to be successful, or you want to be a good wife or husband, or you want to be a good mother, or you want to be pretty, or you want to not have a headache and not have a hard time getting out of bed, all of those things come from what you eat. It's not coming from the sky. I mean, it's not that's where I think we've really lost touch. We've really lost touch with the fact that we are responsible for our health. Unfortunately, we go to these doctors, we really put ourselves in the doctor's hands and just kind of go, I don't feel good, help me. And that's what we've been trained to do, because that's a huge business, and we've lost the sense that we are our doctors. We are our best doctors. And if you eat well, then you feel amazing. And when you feel amazing, you're able to do everything in the world that you want to do. And you don't require. So I guess what I'm saying is that if you don't have a lot of money, prioritizing your health first, above toys, above cars, above whatever it is that you think you need, these things that you think, of course you need a car, but like, not trying to get the bigger, better thing, just really focusing on what's most important and reprioritizing your time. I'm sure you spend time doing things like watching TV. I'm sure you spend time doing things like buying clothes, or trying to find that perfect cream, or whatever. People are doing these things regardless of their income, and they're watching television that's telling them that they need the best, the biggest, the whatever. But really, if you take all that energy and time and focus it on your health, and it can be really, really fun, the benefits are so huge that you won't spend any money on medicine. You won't lose time at work because you'll feel so good. And your quality of life will be so much richer that the abundance will come. So it's really, really about reprioritizing. And it's hard to get your brain around that, but once you do, once you really put cooking, eating, as number one and realize, it happened to me. I had to really, really assess, hang on a second, do I want to be able to do this play that's eight shows a week and in the snow, and I've left my home, I'm living somewhere else, and everything's chaotic, and I've got all these other jobs, I wrote this book, I've got all these things I'm trying to juggle, right? How can I do it? Well, unless I put food as number one, like above hygiene, then everything else falls apart. But when I put food first, everything's great.
How did this start? Because you've said before that the food you used to take in wasn't always the best, and then at one point you had some kind of awakening regarding food, and you moved in the direction of where you are now as a vegan. How did that happen? Was it quick, or was it something that took a bit of time?
Well,
or did something shock you into it?
Kind of all of those things. In my book, I talk about different levels, so that there's no pressure and nobody has to kind of jump all in the way that I did. Because in a way, I did start, so in my book, I have this thing called flirting. So that if it sounds like really extreme to change your health, what I really recommend is to begin, if you want to feel amazing and look your best and have the best possible life that you were meant to live, I suggest reading the book and get it at the library, get it used on eBay, like do whatever you got to do, but get the book, read it, take in that information. And then there's a point where you've got all this information, and now, because the key is getting the information, and it's a fun way to get it. The book's not like dense and doesn't hurt your brain. It's fun, but it's really quality information. And then you just sort of pick, where do you want to be a flirt? Do you want to be a vegan, or do you want to be a superhero? And what that does is give you sort of an access point. So I was kind of flirting without knowing I was flirting from age 8 to 21, because I was on the airplane and I was eating lamb, and my brother started making lamb noises. And being that I was a sensitive little girl who loved animals, I didn't want to, it never occurred to me that the lamb I was eating was an actual lamb. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't think about it, right? And nobody's telling you that. And we have no relationship to the animals that we eat. Like, we're not seeing, if everybody saw them raised and killed, like, it would be such a different experience, but that's not what's happening. So it's all kept from you so that you won't have a reaction to it. And so anyway, that was my first day I decided to go vegan or veggie, but I was 8, so I forgot quite quickly. And then I would do this back and forth, until I was about 21, I kept going back and forth. And I intuitively knew that for the animals, it did not feel right to me to eat them. But then I would be, it tasted good. It was what I was raised on. And I didn't want to make any kind of sacrifice or commitment. I didn't really have anybody there who was doing it too. So I didn't have any kind of, inspiration. It was sort of just an idea that would come and go. And then, but when I was 21, I'd seen a bunch of documentaries on how our food was raised. And at that point, I could no longer look at myself in the mirror and say, personally, after seeing and knowing what was going on, for me, it was just, I couldn't say, Alicia, you're a good person, and continue to contribute to what I was contributing to. Because if I was unwilling to, if I wanted that to stop, it occurred to me, if I want this to stop, I have to stop. I can run around screaming at everybody else to stop the abuse, but I'm the cause of it because I'm the one who pays my dollar for it. And so I made this choice, and suddenly the craziest thing happened, because I did it for animal reasons, which I don't expect other people to do, but my health changed drastically. I mean, suddenly I had cystic acne. I was on asthma medication. I had, an inhaler. I had to get allergy shots all the time. I had antibiotics like 3 or 4 times a year, like most normal Americans, for bronchitis or the flu or whatever. And suddenly I'd lost my inhaler. I didn't go to allergy shots anymore. My skin completely cleared up. My body got really, really lean. I lost like a nice lot of weight that was just really felt good. I felt lighter walking around the world. I just felt this sort of, it felt like I wasn't treading so heavy on this earth, and that I was not part of the problem anymore. I was a part of the solution, and that felt really empowering. And my heart opened too, because I think when you have all this gunk in you all the time, and I experience it too when I eat naughty things now, if I have like a little naughty something, like I feel myself get all muddied up really quite quickly. And then when you take it back and you get rid of it, you can really feel your truth and your journey and your path much more clearly. And I also felt really empowered as a woman because I was having a very hard time at that age. I was 21, saying no and saying my truth and knowing my truth even. And suddenly I knew something so clearly. This is wrong. I must be a part of stopping it. I will not contribute to this anymore. And that was incredibly empowering. So that's kind of how the journey happened for me. And then I got so excited because I realized this isn't just about, I got to it from animals, and then suddenly I was having these incredible health benefits. I was feeling amazing. My nails got so strong that you couldn't bend them. All the whites went away, those calcium marks. And my eyes got really white, and I just felt so strong. And people were saying, you're glowing. And I thought, ooh, what's that all about? And then I started researching it and found that there's all these doctors who are curing cancer and heart disease and diabetes and through diet. And that Bruce Lee was a vegetarian, and all these incredible thinkers of our time were vegetarian, and Einstein and Tolstoy and all these really incredible people, and thought, well, hang on, this is I'm not the first one here. I thought I was maybe inventing it. And I realized this was a really powerful, powerful thing that had been going on and was curing people of illness. And then I discovered the environment. So a really long-winded way to get back to that, I realized that the environment, people talk about the environment and what's going on, and it's really, really dire. We have to do stuff. We have to do everything we can. But the thing I found really frustrating, I went in the Amazon River and was in the rainforest trying to help protect the rainforest and help these indigenous people stop taking money from the bad guys who are saying, hey, let me clear cut your forest, and actually enable them to use what they have and have their culture still. So we were on this project, and I could just see the devastation, and it wasn't from logging per se. It was literally to clear the rainforest for growing food to feed cattle that would be then shipped. The food would be shipped all around, probably to America, probably all over the world. And it was so upsetting. And I just started to realize that the environmentalists who are doing wonderful, wonderful work are somewhat in denial about what the largest contributor is. The United Nations issued a report in 2006 that said that the livestock industry was responsible for more destruction than the entire transportation system. So we can, of course, that doesn't mean we shouldn't worry about our cars and all of that pollution as well, but just to realize that the livestock one is even more damaging. So what you choose to eat makes such a huge difference in terms of, look at how much water it takes. Just to make one steak, it takes enough water to, you could have showered for 6 months. That's how much showering water you could have used just to produce one steak, because of the water they use to feed the cows, to clean, there's so many things that go into growing the food. The oil, the amount of oil we use to produce animal food is really out of control. So the resources, we're taking all our precious, precious resources, and instead of giving them to the people, we're actually feeding them all our resources to animals that then in turn make us sick and hurt us, the planet. So it's so messed up.
Well, you said there are foods that tempt you from time to time. Is that still the case? And if so, what would be an example of something that causes you to stray?
Well, I know that sugar does not do me well. Sugar is bad news blues. And I try, in my home, I try really hard to just use brown rice syrup, which is a much more stable sugar. Brown rice it's just the minerals are still there, it's more intact, and it doesn't spike you at all. So that's the one sugar I can say has never done me any harm, unless I have a few teaspoons of it. When you're pregnant, you make crazy choices. But all the others I have to be a bit mindful of. And sometimes when you're out in the world, traveling and whatnot, you stumble upon things, or I just, if you offer me a vegan brownie, I'm not going to say no.
Say no.
It's just hard. So even though I know, as the brownie is coming to my mouth, that this is going to make me feel bad later, I'm going to have a headache and I'll probably get moody and probably feel a little depressed, I still am but I want to taste the vegan brownie. So, it's sort of like that. And also, to be really fair, the world isn't built for vegetarians right now, so mostly it's really easy. mostly it's really easy, but on occasion I'll be somewhere with people and they'll be having, like, the only really thing I could have would be something really, really boring and not interesting. And they're, like, it's not, here's the point, like, if you take a plate of really delicious, let's say it's like steak and, or just fish and cheese or whatever it is that you might like I loved all those things before. I was never against, I was on a steak and donut diet before I was a vegetarian, just to be clear. I mean, that's pretty much all I ate. And my parents are English, and we had pork chops, and we had, and Jewish too, which was very strange to be eating pork chops. We had pork chops, we had all these things, right? So it's not like I didn't grow up loving all these foods. I'm not saying they're not good. I'm just telling you that they're not better tasting than all the recipes in my book. So you've got this thing where there's this stuff over here that tastes good, but it's destroying the planet, it's destroying your body, making you sick, and very unkind to the animals, like really, really, really unkind. And then you've got this other plate of food that tastes just as good, but is doing no harm to the planet, no harm to your body. It's actually nourishing your body and making you feel amazing, and it's incredibly respectful of the animal kingdom. So which one do you want to pick? Duh. But if you can't find those all the time, then you find yourself in a little bit of like a, I'm hungry and that looks good.
Tell us a bit about how your two worlds intersect. You've been known as an actress for most of your entire professional career, and now as an environmental activist. What are the ways that the two worlds come together from time to time? And do you see them coming together in your work professionally in the future?
There was a time where it felt like they were in conflict, because it was sort of like, you know, how do I explain? I mean, I would have to make choices about projects that I wouldn't want to, they would be exploitive in certain ways of what the things that I believe in, so it would be a bit tricky. And then I'd be like, but it's art, but it's not, and like, why do they have to do that? You know, it's like this whole thing. So I've made some really strong choices over the years in terms of role choices, and also campaigns that I could have done that I obviously were not, you know, things I wanted to celebrate or encourage. So my sort of ethical and passion for this planet and for people to be their best selves has been, you know, not always in support of me having a really wonderful career. But along the way, you know, once I wrote the book, when I felt, it was really interesting. When I wrote the book, I just felt every day like connected to the universe in the most powerful way. I felt like as close to what I would imagine feeling close to God would feel like, where you're just so happy to be doing what you're doing, and so giddy knowing that this information is going to change people's lives and make them so happy that, you know, it was just so exciting. I couldn't wait for the information to get to people. And through that, I feel like, you know, it's just balanced everything out, and I don't really mind. Now I've seen so many amazing stories, people getting off their diabetes medication, people getting off thyroid medication, lupus and mono, and all kinds of amazing things are happening for people that are able to heal. So I'm not so concerned. And my work life, I got really into the theater. I do a lot of plays. And then you don't really have to worry about the material. It's really easy. Like, I mean, I suppose you would have to sometimes, but the material has been really incredible. I got to work with David Mamet and Donald Margulies and Laura Linney and Daniel Sullivan, and really interesting film, theater people, and some of them are film people. But, it's been an incredible journey. So I feel like now it's all in balance.
So in general, as you look to the future, when you think about the American diet and its need to change, are you optimistic that at some point we'll be eating a healthier diet? Because it seems like you're fighting against a tidal wave with what you're proposing versus what is in practice now.
I know. I think that really, really smart people are catching on. Bill Clinton, you know, when people that are not your regular thought of what a vegetarian would be. I mean, there's so many amazing vegetarians right now, but you know, Steve Wynn in Vegas has turned, like, he's vegan. He's turned all his property, I believe. He has like 22 restaurants in his vicinity, and they're all being led in a plant-based. I mean, of course, they offer other things too, but there's an entire plant-based sort of opportunity for people. And Bill Clinton said that he wanted to lose weight for, well, what happened was he understood, he said publicly that 85% of the people who go on a plant-based diet reverse their heart disease. And he wanted to be a part of those, he wanted to see if he could be a part of that experiment and be one of the 85%. And in the meantime, in doing so, he lost like 30 pounds or something, maybe more, and he was really chuffed because he had to go to his daughter's wedding. So when someone like Bill Clinton stands up and says this, it's pretty powerful for people to hear that 85% of the people who change their lifestyle, do this plant-based diet, reverse their heart disease. I think it's undeniable that more people won't think that way. Steve Jobs, there's another wonderful Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, all those guys, like these are really bright thinkers and businessmen, and it's not like they're girls, you know what I mean? So there's some really incredible minds who are coming to this and realizing how smart an idea this is for themselves. So I think it's all going in there. I mean, Oprah just did a huge special on it just yesterday, I think, or the day before. And she did one with me like a year ago. So it's Ellen finally went this way, and you can see how amazing Ellen looks. You see the difference. Ruben Studdard, I think I'm saying his name right, the guy from American Idol, he did it, and he lost an incredible amount of weight and changed his life. So it's happening everywhere. It's just and I do believe in the end, I have to believe that good outweighs bad, and that ultimately people will want to feel great. I mean, it's contagious. Why wouldn't you want to feel your best?
Exactly. Well, thank you, Alicia, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And thank you. For the Global Perspective Show, I'm John Bercia. We'll see you next time.
This program was made possible by funding from the UCF Global Perspectives Office.